Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Born Too Late program, starring myself, Jay Castro, and Josh Lord Rutledge. Not only is this isn't your typical run-of-the-mill episode of Born Too Late. Oh no, this is our 100th episode of this program. And in case you're sitting there saying, no, that's not making any sense. So we did 25 episodes as a podcast. Then we did 75 episodes. Well, I guess technically this is like our 101st episode then, right, Josh?
That's what the math says to me, yes.
Yeah. But so we did 75 episodes of our program on WFMU, which is still available on the WFMU archives if you want to go back and listen to some of the stuff. We had some phenomenal guests. We had a really great time on WFMU, but now we are back as a podcast, and this is how you're going to be able to listen to us from here on out. Whatever podcatcher you subscribe to, or Spotify, a YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, whatever. That's how you're going to be able to listen to us from now on. We are no longer on WFMU. So with that, this episode we're going to be doing, Josh and I are going to be doing our 10 bands / artists that we are currently listening to. That's heavy. It's on heavy rotation on our devices, I guess you can say. So with that, I just want to say, Josh, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for hanging out for 101 episodes.
101 episodes. That's pretty wild. And now we begin a return to podcast land. And it's going to be a little different now, because we've always pretty much typically been an interview show, and we're going to mix that up, I think, quite a bit with the new format. And maybe just have some fun shows like this where we're just doing lists and talking about music and kicking stuff around, as opposed to the traditional interview format. We're not saying that there won't be some interviews.
Sure.
Maybe we'll have guests on and we won't even interview them. We will just talk about things and have themes. And so we were excited to do things like have a major label owner talk to us about Star Wars. So we are geared up for what the future of Born Too Late could be back in the world of podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I always noticed is with like what you were saying, Josh, with a traditional interview, you ask these questions, and then after the mic turns off, and sometimes we sit and we chat with these with our guests, and we get to know them so much more after the mic comes, after the recording stops, because I feel like that's when the conversation just kind of goes naturally, and the real people start coming out. That their hobbies, their likes, their dislikes, their feelings towards this and that, stuff that we never would have thought to ask in an interview from someone that we don't necessarily know all that well. So sometimes I feel like we cut ourselves short a little bit doing the traditional interview questions. I mean, what do you think?
I agree 100%, because I think there's so much less pressure on the host and the guest when you're not in this very formal interview setting. Because we like to think of ourselves as pretty professional people here at Born Too Late, and we put work into these interviews. but then it's kind of tight because you ask these questions, you want to get through all the questions, and you worry about, oh, are we gonna have time for all the questions to be answered, and then which questions we have to throw out. It's kind of fun to just say, you know what, we're going to bring someone on and we're just going to talk about stuff, and we're going to let the conversation go wherever it goes, and I think the listeners won't mind that. I don't think you're going to care if we have Kevin from the Prostitutes on and we are just talking to him as opposed to asking him 15 questions which we have agreed upon in advance.
Right. 15 questions that, for the most part, how did you get to, how did you discover punk rock? How did you, what made you want to play guitar? What made you want to sing? What made you want to write music? And it's like with questions like that, there's only so deep you can get inside a person's mind with that. Where if it goes freely.
Right, because we tend to recycle those same questions in different forms over and over, and as someone in a band, you maybe get tired of answering those questions. So maybe it's more fun to just say, all right, we're going to come on and let you talk about whatever you want to talk about. And
Yeah.
if you want the world to know about a project you're working on, you have the forum, but we're not going to maybe do the same old Born Too Late that we've always done. But I do think that the selling point for us is we do talk to very interesting guests, and we hope that will continue, that we will not be, it won't be just us all the time. And we're glad you tuned in to listen to just us tonight, but we wanted to give you some exclusive, never before revealed content, because I see people all the time on social media and whatnot. They'll say, okay, here are my 10 favorite bands of all time. And, the list is subject to change, but, I want to think about that. Who are my 10 favorite bands? And I thought, well, that would be cool to do the same thing, except with current bands. Because I don't think I've ever, publicly stated who would be my favorite band of the moment. People might be able to guess or think about who some of them would be, but I've kind of a fun thing to do, because I would have done that 30 years ago. Oh yeah, here's my 2 favorite bands in the world. Here's my official favorite band. And it's been a while since I've even maybe identified a favorite band or a second favorite band or a top 3. Holy Trinity, a Mount Rushmore. We're going to go deeper than that. We're going to go to 10. And then I'm going to feel bad about all the bands and artists that didn't make the list. But it's all in good fun, and it is all subject to change. So, yeah, we're going to maybe talk a little bit about the fact that a lot of these artists, we would love to have them on the show, and maybe in some cases we have had them on the show. So you may hear some familiar names as we discuss these wonderful artists tonight on the triumphant return of the Born Too Late podcast.
Yes. I also, being our 101st episode, I also want to thank everybody that was on our show. And I especially want to thank Alex Kish for giving us the opportunity to be on WFMU. Alex still has his radio show on there, Shake Some Action, which is an awesome show. And he gave us the opportunity to be on WFMU, and we greatly appreciated it. And it was fun and awesome. But we felt the podcast format was better suited for the way our lives are at the moment. But anyway, I digress. I want to thank all the people that were on our show. Like Josh said, phenomenal artists, musicians, just people in general. I mean, geez, the people I've met doing this show. I just, I'm remembering. Memories keep flooding back of all the crazy things, and you think, oh, it's just a podcast. It's not, what can happen. But believe me, some crazy things have happened on this show before. But it's been so fun, and the people we've met have been so great and so gracious in lending us their time. Hanging out with us sometimes for many hours. Like I said, you hear an hour and a half, but after the mic goes away, the recording stops. Sometimes the conversations keep on going, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you again, everybody, for coming on and for hanging out with me and Josh on a Friday night. But did you want to say anything about that, Josh? I don't know. Before we get into any of this,
It is pretty amazing to think that we ended up interviewing a lot of people that we just admired as musicians and never knew them, never met them before. And it's kind of cool to actually be able to then say, oh, yeah, I talked to that person for 3 hours, and to establish a personal relationship to the point where we want them back. And we promise you that some of the veterans of Born Too Late will be returning. We like bringing people back on because, we'll get to the end of the episode and Jay will say, come on back anytime you want. And some podcasts, that's a bunch of BS. But when Jay says it, he really means it. And
I do.
We've been lucky that no one was ever like a jerk, where we would say, okay, I don't want that person coming back on the show. So we're pretty fortunate in our community that everyone's been super cool. And I'm just already thinking now about some of the guests we had and how excited I would be to have another couple hours with Jeffrey or a couple hours with Travis. So we really, really thank everyone for being super cool and being open-minded and working with us. And now we're going to have some fun because we're going to talk about basically our top 10 list of current favorite artists. Now, I want to make sure that this does not mean that they had to have released something in the last year. This is any band that is still technically active. They could have been around for 40 years, but if they're still cranking out records, they count. But basically, the idea is that you have your all-time favorite bands, and then you have your 10 current favorite bands, and some of them maybe overlap. But it's kind of neat because I think why we do this podcast is to promote the idea that there's great music out there, and that we're not just listening to the same records now that we've been listening to for 40 years. We are constantly discovering new music and new bands, or new music from bands that we've been into for a while. So I think this will be cool. I hope that you hear this program and check out some of these artists if you haven't already.
Yeah. You want to go? You can go ahead and start us off.
I will be thrilled to do so.
You rank, your list is going to be ranked, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to do 10 down to 1.
Okay.
So this was hard when you got down to like 10, because you start thinking about, well, I certainly have more than 10 bands and artists that I really love. So hopefully no one out there is keeping score and putting me on the hate list because I forgot about them or neglected them or didn't appreciate them. But we're going to start at number 10, and this is someone who was on the program, interviewed by Jay some time ago. So a friend of the program, and that is Natalie Sweet, who's really been cranking out great music for like 10 years now. I think the Shanghai's first 7-inch was 2014.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, but like 3 really great 7 inches with the Shanghais, and the Shanghais broke up. But then what would have been the first Shanghais album ended up being the debut solo album by Natalie Sweet, which was done in collaboration with our pal Travis Raymond, and that came out in 2019. But yes, she's still released several like really good singles since then. Did the collaboration with Brad Marino, and is working on a new record. So if you really love, modern day power pop influenced by girl groups with the punk rock attitude, you definitely need to check out the all of those Shanghai's records, and of course the album. Oh, by the way, it's Natalie Sweet, which came out in 2019 and was later reissued by our pal Lou at Rumbar Records. Tremendous artist, tremendous singer, excellent songwriter, and in my opinion, one of the best things going in the world of power pop, punk, whatever you want to call it. So that's going to be my number 10, and we will now get a selection from Jay.
Yeah, well, first I want to make some comments here. I agree with you. I think Natalie Sweet's music has been really great, consistently great, and I remember getting that that Shanghai's 7-inch when I was still doing Audio Ammunition, and just being so blown away. We reviewed it. I contacted her for an interview. She did an interview with us. And now we did an interview on a previous episode, Born Too Late. And she's a great person, super fun personality. And I hope she does come back. We should, we'll definitely try to make that happen for sure. So yeah. And like Josh said, Travis Raymond and Lou have both been on a few times, and they're also really great people. In case you don't know, Malibu Lou is runs Rumbar Records, and Travis Raymond is producer, songwriter, musician extraordinaire. Does he have he has his own Bandcamp, right, where he has all of his stuff on there?
Yes, it's called Travis Raymond Producer, and that's your one-stop shop for all of his productions. And some of the stuff is his bands that he played on, but some of the stuff is things that he just produced.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's pretty impressive when you look at what he's done and some of the artists he's worked with.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a chance, just go back to listen to some of our shows, and he talks about some of the people he's met. He's, like Josh said, he's worked with. It's crazy. So yeah, go check out his Bandcamp. Anyway, so okay. The way I rank these things, Josh, is it's hard for me to rank things like how I like by likeness, but just because I feel like from week to week my tastes change. Even you ask me at 8:00 in the morning what I love, by noon it's something different. And so the way I kind of rank these is by how much I listen to them. Like how much yes, I love this record, I really liked it, but how much did I really listen to it? And to me, that, like, how much did I actually get it out, put it on, and listen to it? And to me, for myself, I feel like that's kind of a tell of how much I actually really do like it, maybe. So my first pick is Split System. That band, we haven't had them on the show. But that band is a hurricane.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I just heard them with the release of Volume 2, their LP that came out, I believe it was earlier this year. They're Australian, and they blew my socks off. Not only did they blow them off, they blew them out my back door and down the street. I mean, these guys, it reminds me of like the Humpers, like Electric Frankenstein, like something that could have been on. Do you remember American Punk Records, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds something like in between Jackpot, the Fuses, the Prostitutes, like in that vein, in that era. And oh my gosh. And then I went back and I got Volume 1, just as killer. So this band has my utmost respect, and I eagerly await anything these guys put out. They're great.
Yeah, there's so much like really great punk rock coming out of Australia. And when I first heard about Split System and seeing that this was like members of like really like awesome Aussie bands, I was pretty stoked. But I really feel like this has become almost like the best band that any of these guys are in, which is insane because I mean you've got Jackson Reed Briggs and the Heaters. You got Stiff Richards, who are
Oh,
phenomenal
Stiff
on
Richards are
their
awesome
own. But
too. Yeah.
yeah, but there's just something about those vocals and just the absolute like full fury and passion, and those guitars that are just absolutely like blow your ears out, and it's just powerful, you know, rock and roll and sort of that Aussie tradition. But I agree with you with a very similar intensity to the stuff that we were into back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That sort of like American punk rock and roll. There is a similarity there. So yeah, great band, Split System. Absolutely fantastic. It's a great pick. Uh, for those of you who are into the punk rock, that is some real deal punk rock.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna move on to my number 9, and this is our very ever first guest and the author of our theme song, Mr. Charles Matthews and his band, the Cheap Cassettes. They were destined to be on this list, and so here they are making the top 10. So Cheap Cassettes are wild because they've actually been around for like a really long time. Like I think maybe like even like 2011 or 2012 when they first started like releasing some of their songs,
Mm-hmm.
when Kevin was still in Hawaii and Charles was in the United States, and they were sending stuff back to each other,
It's
making
crazy.
making records long distance, and then eventually they ended up together in Seattle and put out that first album, All Anxious All the Time, and then the really great second album on again Rumbar Records, Ever Since. And I just think this is a great example of they're a power pop band, but they don't sound like every other power pop band you heard. There's a Charles has his own style as a singer and as a songwriter, and it just sounds like him, and it sounds like Kevin. And now they've
Mm-hmm.
got some more talent added to the band. That's their next record is absolutely bonkers. It's way beyond what we've would have thought of from the cheap cassettes, and they are going to be on the show at some point this summer, talking about the grand history of power pop from Seattle. So it's going to be a fun theme show. But yeah, I mean, power pop from Seattle or anywhere, cheap cassettes are just they're just first class. You know, American rock and roll band, timeless style, but not really ripping anyone off. Just sort of quality songwriting, great hooks, very, very, active live band. And we're thrilled to have them coming back soon. And I hope that if you don't know the cheap cassettes, you go out and look them up via Rumbar Records or via their own Bandcamp and dig into some great American rock and roll.
Well, they're not on Bandcamp anymore, are they? I thought Charles pulled all their stuff off.
I think that there still is
are they still in there?
A cheap cassettes Bandcamp. I think the Dimestore Halos Bandcamp was discontinued.
So yeah, I agree with you. I like the cheap cassettes a lot, and I think what you said was pretty spot on. It sounds like melodic rock and roll, but it's hard they definitely put their own spin on it. And I think that one of the things that makes them so different, I know Charles, if he hears this, he's going to shake his head, is his wit, the wit in the lyrics. It's like, you hear a lot of like Nick Lowe and maybe Elvis Costello and Paul Westerberg and things like that in their music, but you can't quite pinpoint it. But you're like, after you hear cheap cassettes, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of in the mood for more of this. I'm going to put on some of these other bands. It just gets you in the mood for some of those other bands also. And that's how I can kind of tell that maybe that kind of stuff is in his influence house one way or another. But yeah, they're a great band, and they're great guys also. And like Josh said, they're going to be on here, and I'm looking forward to another good time with Charles. So my next pick is, so this guy, Marco Palumbo, is the head of No Front Teeth Records in London. He pretty much does that himself, and he's as an artist, he does most of the album covers. He plays in these, and probably tipping a dozen at this point, but the guy has been such an influence on my life through his music, starting with the Gaggers, with I can't even begin to name, Miscalculations, and the project he's doing now that I can't get enough of is called Iris Paralysis, and they're it's just him and a guy playing synthesizers. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. T.M. Schazman, who's from Germany, and Marco's from London, and it's just his voice and the synths, and it's so just cold and disconnected. It's just and it's just so eerie, and it's just great. I love it. I can't get enough of it. They've put out a couple LPs, and I think 2, maybe 3 EPs, which I believe I own everything they've put out. And they're phenomenal. Marco's phenomenal. No Front Teeth is awesome. That's a label that, and I don't say this very often, but I buy pretty much everything that he puts out, because it's that great, and I know it's going to be great. I know I'm going to like it. So if you, for whatever reason, aren't familiar with Terminal Gagger and No Front Teeth Records, again, still there's Trench Coat, there's Stalin Video, La Rabia. I'm blanking out, but yeah, that's my next pick. Is I guess Iris Paralysis / Marco No Front Teeth.
Yeah, it's it's amazing because I've just even given up keeping track of all the bands that he sings for.
It's a lot.
So prolific, and yet every single one of those bands is different,
Mm-hmm.
and he's never just sounding the same on two different projects. So that just goes to show you again, kind of like the mindset of like a really creative person who has all of these things that he wants to try, and yeah, many genres of music, the punk rock and the sometimes leaning more towards hardcore or synth pop, post punk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the stuff he does. Yeah, and that was a great episode when we had him on, because he was just a fascinating guy to talk to, and you could just feel the passion that he has for this record label. It was amazing.
Yeah, not just a passion for his label, but just a passion for punk.
Yeah.
Like the dude, it's like punk has just overtaken this man. you know, he's like the embodiment of punk rock. Musician, artist. I mean, you can even add activist in that. I mean, and the thing about that episode is, I knowing what I knew about his music and his label and his art, and I did not expect the person that we got. He was just like was just a kind, um, just like he was just so cool. He was just such a laid back dude and just up for whatever. And he was, yeah. I mean, like I said, I expected somebody not at all like that, but I don't know. What did you think?
Oh yeah, he was a delight, and just very, very friendly and fun to talk to. But I think you find that a lot from these guys, that if you just go by their persona as artists, you might think they would be scary, and then they
Mm-hmm.
turn out to be the nicest guys in the world. Like Michael Lorman was the same way.
Oh,
Like,
and Whitmer.
yeah,
So Johnny Whitmer was the same way too.
to talk to someone like Lorman and see like the level of enthusiasm he has for like all this new punk rock.
Yeah.
And he was talking about all these records he has and these bands that he's into. To see someone that's just still so excited by this music and by new music, it was really inspiring, because you run into a lot of people, our age, who just get very jaded about it and think that a good punk rock record hasn't been made in 40 years. So it's exciting to be able to talk to people who kind of feel the same enthusiasm that we do.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm gonna move to my 8th favorite uh, on my list, and this band we did actually have on the program too long ago when we were still on the radio on the WFMU, and that is Shanghai Lows from Boston, Massachusetts. If it sounds like I'm doing a commercial for Rumbar Records, well, maybe I am. Maybe Lou's gonna owe me a couple of cases of beer. But I remember hearing about the Shanghai Lows, you know, sometime in pandemic times, 2020. It's two incredible front persons. So you've got Jen from the Dents and the Downbeat Five, and you got Danny from Watts, and he was on the program with me not too long ago. And of course, I love the Dents, love Watts. I thought it was really cool, the idea that these two particular songwriters would be coming together with a few other mainstays of the Boston, garage and punk scene. And but I tell you, everything the Shanghai Lows have been putting out really for the last 4 years has just been insane. This is just a great, sort of very classic, what you would think of as a Boston kind of band. It's garage rock, it's punk rock, it's power pop, it's kind of everything you would expect from Rumbar Records. But the idea that you could have two great songwriters who come together in a way that is complementary to each other, to the point where sometimes people think, oh, that's a song that Danny wrote, but actually Jen wrote it, or vice versa. And you think that Dan wrote all of the hard rock and stuff and Jen wrote the poppy stuff, but sometimes it's flipped. And they put out an EP, Kick It Like a Wicked Bad Habit, and then, of course, the full-length album last year. And now they're working on another album, and they've released a couple of really, really great singles this year. But if you love the power poppy, punk rocky, garagey Boston stuff, band is you got to check them out. The mighty Shanghai Lows, just really tremendous, and I'd love to have them back on too. Maybe get the full band on to chat with us, because they are a hit machine right now. They are cranking out some killer tunes.
Yeah, I wish I could have made that episode with you and Dan. I would have loved to meet him. He seems like such a cool guy. And the Shanghai Lows are a great band, like Josh said. In fact, I think the Shanghai Lows were probably the first band I heard on Rumbar Records. Yeah, they're great. They have some really fun videos on YouTube also, if you check that out. But yeah, just everything Josh said, ditto. And that would be awesome if Dan could come on and bring the rest of the band. I would definitely like that. So my next pick is another band that has not been on our show, but I cannot get enough of this band. I probably listen to them at least once every couple days. This LP, I believe it came out last year, called Games of Power, was just wow. I'm talking about that band Homefront. And they sound like, and I hate doing this, but just to give people an idea of kind of what you're in for, sometimes I feel like it sounds like a mixture between Cockspar and New Order.
Wow.
And yeah, and they definitely have like that, like anarchist, like crass vibe, but it's set to like such melodic, music, and it also kind of like the later Blitz years, like,
yeah,
that's what it sounds like also, but in my opinion, better. And they're from Edmonton, and they're on a British label called La Vida es un Músicos, and friggin' phenomenal. They only have one LP out. They have a couple of EPs that are just as great, but yeah, I can't get enough of Homefront. They're so great, and I believe they toured the U.S. a little bit with the Chisel Of course, he didn't come here. And I don't even think they came to the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken. But if they do come anywhere near here, rest assured I will try my damnedest to be there. Have you ever heard them, Josh?
No, this is going to be an educational experience for me because this is very intriguing the way you describe this band.
Oh man, they're so great, so great.
I mean, I can't say I've ever heard a band quite like that, unless we are talking about those later Blitz years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's very exciting. Always looking for exciting new music to check out. So on to number 7 here, and this is somebody that we have booked to be a guest on the show this fall. That is Rich Ragany, who I really think is absolutely one of the most talented songwriters in all of rock music today. He, of course, has been in the music scene for long time, going back to the 90s in Canada, and has been in tons of really great bands. But in terms of him being a front man, that's been about a decade. And he had his band Role Models. Then he had a band, Rich Ragany and the Digressions, and now he's kind of going out on a full solo career. So he has a new album, You Can Get Dark With Me, which was released not too long ago, and we will certainly have him talking about that when he comes to discuss things with us in September. But he's just a brilliant songwriter, and coming from the world of garage punk and hard rock and stuff and everything, he's definitely has a lot of different styles that he covers. He's not a one-dimensional songwriter, and I really think he's just coming into our own, which is a great thing to be for someone who's our age, to be saying, here's a guy who's just coming into his peak. So I've actually 6 times have put him in my top 10 at the end of a year in terms of albums with his various bands, and that's going to be 7 this year. I really feel like You Can Get Dark With Me is up there in the conversation for album of the year so far for 2024. And I'm just thrilled to see him getting such good reviews for this album and the previous albums. It really seems like the press in Britain really gets it that this guy is super talented and is a special kind of songwriter. So there's Rich Ragany in my number 7 position.
Nice. I have not heard that much of Rich Ragany, and I remember you told me about how I really want to have this guy on here, and so I look forward to hearing more of it. I haven't, and I don't know why. It sounds like he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something that's eluded me, and I want to listen to more, and I will before he comes on for sure. So, in your opinion, what's the Rich Ragany LP? What's the best intro to his music? Like, what's the best LP you'd recommend to someone who's never heard him?
Ooh,
Like
that's a
myself.
really good one because it kind of depends on like maybe where you're coming from personally.
Well, knowing me, kind of
Yeah,
know where I'm coming from.
because I feel like he started out with Role Models and was doing really great, like sort of power pop meets glam punk, and
Sounds
then he kind
good.
of sort of went into solo and has sort of blossomed. So I think anyone that I'm talking that I would be trying to get into into Rich Ragany, I would probably maybe start with the go-to guy, which is the first album he put out with the Role Models back in 2015. But then definitely probably the albums he's done with the digressions the last couple of years, which was his backing band.
Okay.
Really outstanding. So I'd say maybe ease into it with a Role Models record, the go-to guy, Forest Lawn, and then if you like that, kind of move into the
Digressions.
the last two albums of the digressions. The one he did last year was really very, very epic, very, very, like a huge, massive, sort of almost arena rock type record. Incredible band with amazing players, and it's I love that I can't really describe him because he's not just one style of music. But I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, it's like Tom Petty meets Johnny Thunders meets Bruce Springsteen meets Fleetwood Mac,
Jeez.
crazy stuff like that." Because yeah, I mean, you can't really in a sentence contain what he's doing, other than the fact that he's just a tremendous songwriter who just is really on a roll right now, and I'm just excited to see what he continues to do. Because with the new album, he kind of did a really very interesting creative thing where he wrote these songs, recorded them the day they were written in his bathroom, and then they went into the studio and added stuff to it, but they kept parts of the original mix for all the tracks, so you still have that original spontaneous inspiration, but you also have a little bit of the fully developed song. Because I know that he was trying to do something a little bit more intimate, because there's a very, very big production on that last album with the digressions, and he wanted to go with something a little bit more personal, but it doesn't sound like Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska or something like that, where it's really stripped down, because it is still well produced, but you still feel that, at that gut level, you can feel how intensely personal these songs are and where they came from.
Interesting. Okay. That's a lot for me to process. Man,
Yes.
that's awesome. Can't wait to meet this dude. So I just realized I went from my number one. You're going from 10 to 1. I started with number 1. So we're going the opposite way.
That's all right. We are gonna acknowledge all of our picks.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So my next pick is a band that for me seemed to come out of absolutely nowhere, and just come on, I guess, for lack of a better word, the scene, and just dominate for me, and that's the Sleevines.
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh, you want to talk about a titan of a debut LP? Oh, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Like it's and and I wish, and in a way, I wish I didn't know Steph was Irish, because for some reason, all I can think of, all the comparisons for me seem like they're going in that direction. Like anything awesome you can think of that came out of Ireland, whether it's the Pogues or Undertones, Stiff Little Fingers, all that sounds like all that stuff, and it's just melodic, hard hitting, just killer punk rock and roll with the sensibilities, like you were saying, Josh, about Rich, with the sensibilities of a singer-songwriter. at the helm. We tried to have Steph on the show, and it didn't quite work out because he was on tour for solo music. And we had him and Ryan Sweeney of Sweet Time Records, who was a phenomenal guest. Another guy that so great to meet Ryan. And if you don't know his label, Sweet Time Records, for sure check them out, because what he's putting out is phenomenal also. But this debut LP for the Sleevings came out on Dirt Nap Records, and it's so great. It's probably one of my favorite LPs of the last maybe 5 years. I listen to it constantly. I can't get enough. I know you like them, right, Josh?
Oh, absolutely. This is the only thing keeping Rich Ragany out of having album of the year is going to be the Sleevings.
Nice.
Because yeah, there's just nothing else quite like them out there. It's like, okay, like almost like a band that would have been on like Chiswick Records
Oh
in
yeah.
in 1978 if Van Morrison was their lead singer. So the way that he combines like this poetry with this really hard driving music, and it's just a great situation of where one artist meets another artist and they create something that's new for them. Because if you listen to Steph's other bands, none of it sounds anything like the Sleevings.
Right, for
Um,
sure.
but obviously, when he and Jamie met and formed the band and had this mutual love for like this, 70s punk rock and pub rock and all of this stuff, and to play with that kind of energy and sort of like raw power, but to still have this really like smart and funny and passionate and beautiful lyrics. I mean, when they released that first single, "Give My Regards to the Dancing Girls," and I just
Oh
heard that,
man.
I just sat there and I was just dumbfounded. Like, this is, I don't even know what to say. This is just beautiful and powerful, and this is the kind of song that just makes you happy to be part of the human race. And
Yeah.
it was just thrilling. And then of course the album came out, and it's not like they were just some kind of one trick pony. The whole album is great, and there's like a lot of like really like aggressive, like really hard hitting tracks on there, and then there's a few more that are like more slow burns and really great variety of songs. Yeah, it's just incredible band, and everyone who talks about them says they're just blown away by their live show. Like, this is the best new punk band out there, I think, by a mile, and it's thrilling to have something like this to infuse energy into our world. So I'm glad you mentioned them. They were almost a little bit too new to make my list,
Uh-huh.
but oh, so fantastic. And they've got a new record coming out, a 7-inch on I-94 recordings very soon,
Nice.
as part of the Detroit Covers series. So if you wondered what would happen if the Sleevings covered the Four Tops, buy that record, which will be out end of July. So yeah, great pick there. So I'm down to my number 6 here. This is someone who I've been a fan of really from the kind of beginning of when I had my Faster and Louder blogs. At the time, he was kind of a young up and comer in the scene, coming out of the pop punk scene, moving into the power pop scene. Now he's like a rock star, and that's Mr. Kurt Baker. I've reviewed him so many times, I've lost count. But you're talking about a guy who just knows what it means to write a great pop song and understands melodic rock and roll and the history of music, and has sort of a spirit of, I'm going to make music that's fun and I'm going to put on a show for people and people are going to come out and they're going to have a good time. What a true ambassador for rock and roll he is. So many albums of his that I love. He had the albums that he co-wrote with Wyatt Thunderberg, sort of his classic power pop albums, but he also, of course, uh, has a few albums with his Spanish garage band. The guy can pretty much do it all. Garage rock, power pop, straight, 60s style rock and roll. And of course, now he's getting recognition around the world because he's on Wicked Cool Records and has been played heavily on the Underground Garage. And thank God for that you can turn on the radio and hear truly great rock and roll. So we've not had Kurt Baker on the program. We would love to have Kurt Baker on the program.
Yeah.
Seems like a heck of a nice guy and a true lover of music. So I have enjoyed following his career over the last, decade plus, and he's still going strong.
Yeah. He is a great songwriter. And I think I remember reviewing his stuff for my blog, and great power pop rock and roll, melodic rock and roll. And he did an interview with us, and his interview is one of the best that came out of that blog. If you want to read a cool interview with him, go to Ammunition and just type in Kurt Baker on the search and read his interview, because it is one of the most thoughtful and the most interesting. And I feel like he gave a lot. He gave way more than a lot of people did for us, and I'll always appreciate that. And it's a great read. It really is. And yeah, he seems like a really fun guy, really interesting guy, talented dude. And I'd love to talk to him. It'd be so great if he came on. And like you said, in finally enjoying some recognition on Wicked Cool, deservedly so. I mean, a dude's worked so hard. Dude's put out a lot of music, written a lot of original music, and he's definitely paid his dues. And it's cool that he's finally getting some recognition for sure. So my next pick is another newer band from California, from Southern California, called Bloodstains. And this LP, by the time I caught wind of it, was self-released, and I think they pressed maybe like 600, and they sold out. And I heard them on Bandcamp the first time, and then I believe I want to say Drunken Sailor reissued it. And I haven't gotten a physical copy of this LP yet, but like the name states, it's just classic 80s style Orange County punk rock. Like, you think of, just would have fit perfectly into like the Danger House Posh Boy lineup. And I can't get enough of this LP. It's awesome. I don't know a whole lot about the band. I'm sorry, but if you get a chance, if you see this LP on for sale anywhere, and you like that kind of music, Agent Orange, Adolescence type stuff, forget it. It's phenomenal. It's right. It hits the same exact nerve as those bands do. So have you ever heard them, Josh?
I have not. This is another exciting thing for me to check out. Sounds like it would be right up my alley.
Oh man, they're awesome. They're so great. But yeah, it'd be cool to have them on. Sometimes I feel like, man, these guys are just too punk to just sit in one place for an hour. Some of these guys, I don't know what the hell they do, but it's like, I don't, to sit there and chat just doesn't seem like them, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
So getting to the top 5 now. So this band's very interesting because I think sometimes you can tell you love a band just by how much time you spend listening to them. So I think your formula here is a really great idea. I'm just going to say this is who I've played the most. This makes my list. So here's a band that I have reviewed, incredibly, 42 times.
Oh man. Is it Vista? Oh, never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
So this is Vista Blue.
Okay, yeah. I was going to steal your thunder there for a second.
And it's cool that I've got a pop punk band on here because I've always liked pop punk, but sometimes I feel like in my more recent years, I don't write about it as much as I should or write about it as much as I used to. But this is a pop punk band that's also definitely got a power pop side to it as well. And sometimes, depending on what the release is, you don't know if you're getting something that's going to lean a little bit more power pop or a little bit more pop punk. But also you've got a little bit of like that oldies influence too. Little Beach Boys thrown into the mix. Sometimes a little Weezer in there, Fountains of Wayne. So lots of good influences. But to me, this is just a perfect like modern day like band for the digital age because they don't really make a lot of albums.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask if they put out any physical records or if it's
they
just
do have a few that they've done. But I think their priority has been just delivering all of this like music on a pretty consistent basis for free, which is really cool. But being that consistent in terms of putting out music, but having it be very good. We talk about some of these writers who are very, very smart, and that wit. I think Mike is just one of the. I think what's most underrated about him is what a great lyricist he is, and how he has this like very, very sharp sense of humor. And it sort of in a very endearing way. Like to me, this is like the pop punk band that your 6-year-old child could listen to. Yet it's music that adults could listen to too. Like this is like to me, if I had to pick a band that would be suitable for ages 7 to 70, Vista Blue would be it. And I like the fact that they put out Christmas music and they put out seasonal releases, and they'll put out songs for the Olympics, and they'll put out songs for Halloween and all this fun stuff. They're just not taking things too seriously. They're just putting out music because they enjoy it. And I think I kind of came into contact with them, I think, via Mick Fletcher.
So,
yeah.
There's some punk songs, Mick Fletcher.
A friend of ours. Yeah, I think Mick Fletcher was a fan of theirs, and then somehow that led to Vista Blue introducing themselves to me, and now 42 years reviews later, I have a band that I really love. So I guess that's my favorite pop punk band, and just couldn't be denied for them to be on this list here.
Cool. Well, I've seen their review or your reviews on your blog of theirs. But I don't think I've ever like sat down and really listened to them. I think I listened to them just from the links on there, and I remember not liking it, and I need to sit down and I need to really get into this band. I think it's awesome to put out Christmas music. In fact, that's one of the things I love about Jeff Palmer and Brad Marino's old band, The Connection, is the fact that they put out
Yeah.
Chris's music. So I'm definitely going to check them out now for sure. Um, so yeah, Vista Blue, and if by some chance Mick Fletcher is listening to this, Mick, come on our show. You're always invited.
Yes.
So my next pick is okay. Wait a minute. Before I get into it, I just realized I don't really have any pop punk stuff on my list, and I do miss me a good punk rock, a pop punk band. So I that's another reason why I want to get into Vista Blue. If you know, uh, my list is definitely missing some good pop punk. Anyway, uh, my next pick is the Battle Beats. They're
Oh yeah.
oh man. So speaking of Sweet Time Records, their LP Meet Your Maker. Oh, it just it reminds me of the Registrators, uh, irreverent, ADD riddled little cousin. It's just fast, gut punching, melodic garage punk rock and roll. I mean, easily could have been on Ripoff, on Estrus, on those great lo-fi garage punk bands in the 90s, or those labels. Like, oh man. And then to think that this was all one guy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, but Andresa Nugraha. He plays all the instruments. He does the vocals, and yeah, he seems like a cool dude. And if again, invitation extended, I'd love to talk to him, because this LP just blew me away. Also,
Yeah, it's because even like the earliest stuff that he put out was just fantastic. But you can definitely hear like the evolution in his capabilities uh, as a musician, because this new stuff, it just kicks so much ass. It's su- it's got such a harder and tougher, more aggressive sound. You know, just absolutely furious, and he's come a long way from like maybe just ripping off Teen Generate.
oh yeah,
And that's what you. There's just not a lot of stuff like that that's coming out anymore. That's when Sweet Time Records is so cool, because they're really putting out like a lot of high quality stuff in this world of garage punk.
yeah.
So major salute to the Battle Beats. So I am now getting into the rarefied air here, the top four. Here's my number 4 slot, a absolute friend of the program, an early guest of ours, a recent guest of ours, Brad Marino. We mentioned him, and he's just been a consistent producer of great records. And anytime he has an album out, it's probably going to be one of my top albums of the year. I think he had my third highest rated album of 2019, third highest rated of 2021, fourth highest rated last year. So he's just so good. And I feel like the thing about Brad Marino is he's been kind of really a big influence on me, maybe over the last like 10 years or so, in terms of how my tastes have changed. 'Cause I think when I started like Faster and Louder, I was still kind of a genre geek. So I was really only into like, okay, I like 77 style punk, and I like 70s power pop, and I like,
Uh-huh.
you know, any combination of the two. Whereas I feel like, we're getting into the Connection and Brad's solo stuff, I've been more into like, okay, it still has the appeal of power pop, but it's not necessarily power pop per se. It's rock and roll, and the idea that all that 70s power pop stuff was still influenced by the stuff that came out in the 60s. So that basic idea of like the 3-minute rock and roll song with the great pop hook. Brad Marino is just so good at that. Another guy who writes very, very underrated lyrics, and kind of takes all this cool stuff and puts it together. Like, okay, yeah, we know he likes the Ramones and Stones. Throw in some Chuck Berry, throw in some Rockpile.
Beach Boys.
Yeah, Beach Boys, and yeah, if it just anytime Brad Marino puts something out, you just go buy it. It's just that good, and he's a really good guitar player too, which sometimes gets overlooked. Cool singer, but awesome songwriter, and yeah, I just like the idea that you can play a sort of timeless style of rock and roll, but doesn't necessarily have to be kitschy or retro. It can still have a little bit of a modern feel to it, and there's just few in our world that are better at rock and roll than Brad Marino.
It's funny that you said that. It's great that somebody can still play timeless sounding rock and roll, and not just that, but make it sound fresh and still make it sound fun and not just kind of tired. I mentioned the Beach Boys influence because I was actually just listening to Hot Rod Rampage, which is his new EP, and it's pretty Beach Boys influenced, and it's so great. And like Josh said, it's timeless rock and roll, and it's fun, and sometimes that kind of stuff is essential in one's life. Some you don't always have to be listening to something insane, or music like this is it's like a touchstone, and it's just fun. And that, like Josh said, we had Brad on, and he's a great dude. He's a fun person to talk to, and I hope he comes on again. Once again,
Absolutely.
invitation extended, Brad. So yeah, that's another guy. Once the mics, the recording shut off, I think, gosh, we talked for a while afterwards. And so yeah, cool guy, makes great music. Can't wait to hear more. Can't wait to have him on again. So my speaking of, this is probably the furthest you can get away from this kind of style, but my next pick is Bootlicker. And oh my gosh, so what can I say? Just sledgehammer to the face, punk rock is what Bootlicker does. New LP, 1,000-Yard Stare, does not let up. It's just killer stuff. Neon Taste, knocking it out of the park once again. So yeah, I don't know. Do you listen to much Bootlicker, Josh?
I can't tell you anything about Bootlicker.
Good stuff.
I would be curious to educate myself.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, this, that's what we're, like Josh was saying, we don't stay in the same lane. Sometimes we drift, and sometimes we drift off the cliff. That's where Bootlicker comes in. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, now we're down to, are we top 3?
We are down to the Holy Trinity. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a band that I kind of got into. Maybe I was a little bit of a late comer. to this band. But boy, ever since I got into them, it's just been one perfect album after another, and I just can't understand why they're not huge. Uh, not too far from uh, where you are, Jay. I'm talking about the X-Bats,
Mm.
and just an insane band. First of all, I love family bands. I think that's the coolest thing in the world. You know,
Yeah.
that you have a parent and a child making music together, collaborating in sort of that way that people who are related, only those kind of people can create on that with that kind of vibe.
Right.
But the idea that they've kind of taken like this, what was essentially the classic '60s music, the melodies and the approach, but totally made it new, and have really done that by having all of this punk rock influence. And they put out Kicks, Hits, and Fits in 2020. That was the first album of theirs that I had heard, and that was really tremendous. And then they've had two more, including Song Machine, which, as far as I'm concerned, best album that anyone put out last year. Uh, they kind of moved a little bit into the '70s almost with Song Machine, uh, into that period of time that nobody ever chooses to mess with, which is like the early '70s. And I love that. I love that. Oh yeah, we're not afraid to sound like the Partridge Family or Cher or anything like that. We'll uh, we'll have this very warm '70s type sound, but still with that punk rock attitude. You know, obviously great lead singer, great songs, very meaningful lyrics, intelligent music, but with that level of energy. Uh, and I'm kind of glad they signed to Goner to be on a really high profile label that's going to do them
Did
a
they
lot of
really?
justice.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't
and
know that.
it's just great to see that they're getting out there now, and they're touring the world, and people love them, because how can you not love the Expats? Uh, and so anyone listening here, if you don't have like the last three Expats albums, you can go get them because they are incredible.
I don't have them. And I'm almost ashamed to say that's another band. I see you review them and I listen to them like pretty good, but then for some reason uh I don't know, I get distracted, so many things flying my way. But that's another band I want to sit down and do a deep dive on, is the Expats, because I know how much you like them, and I'm sure they don't suck if you like them. So I want to check that out. And they're from Arizona, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I'm even more embarrassed now.
Yeah, this is a band you could potentially see
Yeah,
on a somewhat regular basis.
I don't know if they. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I don't know if they play all that much, but maybe they do. I mean, I'm just
I
not
think
in the.
they're touring a lot more now, which is
Mm.
great. I mean, they've been at this a long time.
Yeah, I remember them from, you know, I know it's, you're not supposed to mention but I remember from them from the Burger Records days, weren't they
Yeah, which is I
on?
think why I ended up being a latecomer to them, because I wasn't really into anything that was coming out on Burger Records, and and now I kind of regret that, because they have a lot of really good releases that were originally out on Burger Records.
Well, you had bands like the X Bats, and then you had bands like The Garden. So it's like there was a lot of weird stuff on Burger. So I mean, I a lot of it, and I thought it at the time, but I probably would have been, stoned and chased out of town with torches. I would have said it back then, but a good 90% of that was pretty crap.
Yeah.
There was some cool stuff on there for sure, but that's a heap loads of just drivel that I don't know. I won't talk about it anymore. But anyway, yeah. So I remember that name from back then, and I remember them being like, "Oh, this doesn't suck," but yeah. Excuse me. So my next pick is the Corettes, who we also had on our show, who were lovely human beings. That was one of the best interviews I've ever done. They were just everything that I had hoped they would be. And their husband and wife duo, and they tour the world relentlessly and somehow manage to put out killer rock and roll. I guess it's like Phil Spector inspired garage rock and roll, with some punk energy, twisted in there. But their new 7-inch Shake, phenomenal. Just two killer songs on that 7-inch. But they I don't know when they have time to do anything. They're like everywhere. You follow them on social media and they're like, wow, you must have like perpetual jet lag because they're just zooming around the globe. It's crazy. And I salute them for doing that. And I hope they never stop because their music is fantastic. And I hope someday they'll break that barrier of being on our show to being on something much greater, because they deserve it. Do you like them, right, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool that we're getting into some of these bands that could potentially be like literally next level, like legit famous.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why they couldn't be.
Yeah.
And
Oh, you want to talk about videos? Go to YouTube and type in the Corettes. They have a ton of awesome videos for their songs too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just want to throw that in.
So getting very, very close to the end here. So in the number 2 position, this was hard because I was, number 2, number 1. Not a lot of difference. But this is another band that we had on the program while we were on the WFMU. And this is a band that kind of splits time between California and Detroit. It's Haley and the Crushers. Another band that's been around for like a while that I didn't get into until a little bit later. Like I think they started putting out records in like 2016, but I didn't really notice them until maybe 2018. It really wasn't until they released their album Vintage Millennial in 2020 that I really thought, oh wow, this band's really great. And then album after that I thought was just off the charts. They've got a new EP coming out this fall. They've released a couple singles in advance. I just love the idea here of a band that's got the elements of punk rock, elements of pop, but isn't necessarily just quote unquote pop punk. They've got a unique sound, really another band with really tremendous lyrics, and a band that continues to grow and evolve. And I think it can be tiresome from their point of view if everyone's comparing you to like the Go-Go's, you know.
Yeah.
But I think at least that's a reference for someone who wonders, oh, should I check out Haley the Crushers? Okay, or a little bit like the Go-Go's. Okay, yeah. And it's almost with the new EP coming out, it's almost like they've almost had like a resurgence of their punk rock roots, which is very exciting to me because a band can start out being a punk rock band and then they can grow more pop, and then you can kind of go back to what inspired you in the first place. And obviously they're on Josie Cotton's record label, so they have access to wonderful production, and so it's not like they're going to make records that sound like crap. Uh, but they definitely have a rawness to their new songs, and I'm just excited because I feel like this is a band that is really just coming into its own. They've had some good records, but I think their best stuff is still in front of them, and so very excited by Haley and the Crushers, and I hope you would all check them out.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish I would have been on that show also. Yeah, great band, definitely. My next pick is a band that I found on Faster and Louder, and they're called Loose Lips.
Oh wow!
Not the Shane White Loose Lips from back in the, but these guys, 4-song EP of just power pop influenced rock and roll with like a good bar of grime just scrubbed over it, but it's kind of like a I don't know, would you call them a side project, because you got members
Definitely,
of Chubby
because
and the
you're talking
Gang.
about talk about the Prize, you're talking about the Unknowns. You're kind of coming together. I can't see this becoming the main band because both of those bands are so amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a side project for that to have kind of just come on the scene, yeah, that's what I love. Just a great like dirty rock and roll record that still is power pop.
Yeah, it's great. I can't get enough of this 7-inch. I'm probably gonna buy it. I know. Well, I don't even know. I don't think I own it. I still listen to it on Bandcamp. So
yeah, it's a cassette.
Oh, that's right. It's a cassette.
Yeah.
That's why I. Yeah. Hopefully somebody will release it on 7-inch.
Yeah, I got a feeling that because it's so amazing, like what's been going on with the Prize. Like their first 7-inch came out, and 2 days later it sold out, and then they repressed it and sold out again, and they've just that's I'm still excited for them to finally put out a full length album, because that could be like album of the year material if that
for sure
finally comes out, because that's to me it's like that's what power pop should be.
The Prize.
Yeah, the Prize.
Yeah.
It's got that really like real power to it,
right?
But it's also very influenced by punk rock. And hey, I mean, speaking of families and being the child of a Cosmic Psycho's member, it's kind of cool. And yeah, I love the Prize, and I love Loose Lips.
Yeah. Hope to have many more records to come. I was wondering, I'm like, why don't I own this? But I forgot. Yeah, it was a cassette. So yeah, hopefully somebody presses some vinyl of that sometimes.
I imagine that will come out on vinyl, because I can't imagine that people aren't like listening to this and be like, holy shit, this is fantastic.
I know.
So getting down to my number one, and again, this could have been number two depending on how this could have gone. Haley and the Crushers gave a very, very good run here, but it's got to be the Speedways, who actually started out as it was just going to be a solo project. First album, Just Another Regular Summer, was really a one-man creation, more or less. And then it was just so successful that it became a band. And so now the Speedways have 3 albums. They released Radio Sounds in 2020 and Talk of the Town in 2022. Another band that I would say I would broadly define as power pop.
For sure.
But they've got like also like very, very classic, influences from the 60s and girl groups and, you know, Phil Spector, very, very dramatic, very cinematic type songs. And I'm just so stoked for them to put out more music because I feel like they have a amazing trilogy of albums so far. Uh, and anyone who loves power pop and who hasn't heard the Speedways ought to check them out.
I see that's another band. I remember, and I could be wrong. I could be remembering this wrong, but I remember there was like a bunch of power pop bands that came out around the same time, like the Reinhardts, the Speedways, Everyday Things, like the Pee Wees, Ed's band Radio Hearts. And I'm like, I remember going, I can't remember. I can't keep them straight. So Speedways, I definitely is another band I need to go back and sit down and listen to. Where are they from? Do you remember?
London.
That's okay. I had a feeling it was from Europe. Yeah, I'll definitely check them out a little bit more intently. My number one, which was actually my number 10, but whatever, is is Angel Face.
Yeah.
It's on another group that just kind of blindsided me. Came out slovenly, came out with a 7-inch, awesome. Then right after that came the LP, which is just as fantastic. Fink from Teen Generate and Toyozo from Fadeaways band, and it sounds like that. I mean, it sounds like those bands with a little bit more glam, maybe, or a little bit more power pop. We've said that word so many times, but
yeah,
with thrown in, but the same kind of Teen Generate Fadeaways intensity and he twists some of those melodic, verses in there, and it's fantastic. I love this LP. I didn't get the chance to get the 7-inch because it just blew out of there so fast. But LPs can't sing its praise enough.
Yeah, I thought the album was actually better than the 7-inch.
Did you? Yeah.
But yeah, great record. And yeah, anything that those guys are doing is always going to be worth checking out.
Oh yeah. Anything Fink does is definitely worth getting, and But that pretty much concludes our list. Josh?
Yes. So if you liked or are intrigued by what you heard, maybe check out some of these bands, and some of these bands we might have on in the future, some of these bands we have had on in the past. And we just want you all to be excited about new music, because we are.
Yeah, there's still great music being put out there by talented musicians, and it's worth checking out. It's worth spending money on. It's worth checking them out when they come to your town, even dropping them. I know this might sound cheesy, but even just because I used to do this, and people seem very grateful. Finding them on social media, go to their Instagram and just say, "Hey, got your LP," and just tell them how much you dig their music and how much they're appreciated out there. Because I don't, I think that helps.
I think it does. Yeah, I think people don't realize that these bands really are like moved by that, because they put so much passion and time and effort into this, and usually they're not able to do it to make a living. So they're working their butts off and giving all of themselves to be able to create music and go out and play shows and meet people. So yeah, I think it's exciting when they get feedback from people who are like, yeah, I really love what you do.
Yeah, I used to do that back in the day. I used to handwrite letters
Yeah,
and send them off, and I 9 times out of 10 I get a response. You know,
yeah,
and you
that's
get
something that we kind of lost in the internet era, is the era when you could just handwrite letters to bands. I guess you still could. It would be a little weird because most of the bands aren't going to be giving out their mailing addresses anymore.
yeah, yeah, but no, email, Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, whatever. I'm sure they'd love it, and it's definitely a cool thing to do. And um, Josh and I kind of just do it anyway when we invite people on our show.
Yeah.
So yeah, and well, all these bands worth checking out, all the labels. Please, tune in a couple weeks for a new episode of Born Too Late. We're back on the podcast road. So tune in and check us out. Give us throw us an email. What is it? Born Too Late Pod at gmail.com, and tell us what you think. Tell us if you want to come on our show, whatever, drop us a line. We'd greatly appreciate it. Josh, any parting words?
Thanks for listening, and we will hear you again soon, or you'll hear us again soon.